I'm truly grateful and delighted to be part of this lunch and learn session. So first of all, I would like to thank PPMA and Nuthan for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. My sincere hope is that within these 20 minutes, I can inspire you to be healthier and happier in your days ahead. So this is Nuthan Manohan. Namaste. I am an international trainer. I train across Southeast Asia, India, Middle East and Europe. I am a primary researcher. As we shoot this, I have a project going on which is related to 300 girls. We are doing a social intervention where we study how few hours of intervention on happiness and stress can impact the quality of their life during this pandemic. We are also studying how it is going to impact how they are able to deal with the stress of exams, because they're going through this phase where they are really compounded by the amount of problems that is going on. One is the uncertainty of the situation, the pandemic, and plus the change in terms of how they are expected to prepare for an exam and write an exam. So that's an interesting study that's happening right now. And I am a TEDx speaker and my topic was on perfumery. I really would like to hope that by this session I can get you excited about perfumery, particularly about Ayurvedic perfumery. So as a background, this was almost a decade ago. I was going through one of the darkest phases of my life. I was getting treated for stress, for anxiety, for depression, for insomnia and a whole host of things. And this is when yoga started to speak to me. I started finding solace in yoga. And eventually I started finding a calling there. So I went on to do my teacher training course. I went on to do a master's in yoga. But one of the things that yoga made a big difference was in my sensitivity. In the sense, I have always been attracted to essential oils and perfumes. But this was a time when I was going through a severe heartbreak, a very, very devastating heartbreak. And I walked into this store. And I recall smelling a particular blend of rose. And trust me, it almost felt like I was wearing this really tight jacket and somebody just unzipped it. And I could breathe, and that made a huge difference. And that's when I was like, okay, can I smell some more? I started, trying out different oils. I remember smelling a bergamot, a basil, a cardamom, many oils, and I started blending them. Because earlier what would have happened is I would smell it and I would just evaluate, do I like it, not like it. But now maybe because of this practice that I was doing, particularly Kundalini related yoga practices, what I could do was sense how these oils affected me in terms of my chakras or in terms of different physical parts of my body. And the fact was that once I finally blended the oil, whenever I smelt it, it was like somebody just healed my heart. So I started calling it my heartbreak oil and I went back to Hong Kong. I used to be based in Hong Kong. I had come down to India and that's where I kind of blended these oils. And I went back to Hong Kong and often I would find my friends going through a heartbreak and I would make them smell this oil that I had for them. And what I noticed was every time they would smell it, they feel better. To the extent some would stop crying, and because I have this whole research background, what I would do is I would take it away and see what happens. It's a bit cruel of me, but then I wanted to know what happens. And I would see that, their mood starts to change. So very clearly I knew that, there was something about the oils which was affecting their emotions. I started studying a bit more, and that's when I realized that some of the hormones you might produce or some of the biochemicals your body produces, specifically when you're in love, and I don't just relate it only to oxytocin or any of it, but specific ones which make you feel really good. Okay, when that gets stopped, for instance, when there's a heartbreak and when there's a breakup and you have stopped having those experiences which produce these hormones or these particular biochemicals, what happens is that the body either goes into a withdrawal or it starts craving for it and it starts feeling sad. And the fact was that roses and chocolates have compounds which are very, very similar to the one that you would bring out in your body when you're in love. So armed with all these information, I started studying further and further. So now, I should also tell you that, before all this began, I used to work in brand consulting, and I was particularly interested in consumer behavior. So in the last tenure that I held, it was for Oreo biscuits, and it was for across Asia Pacific. I was 28 then, and I felt really good because I was growing very successfully in my work, and but very clearly my specialty was behavior. And so when I started experiencing sorrows in my own life, or when I started observing sorrows and different kinds of physical and mental ailments, the question I had was, is behavior somehow connected to what you're feeling and what you are, experiencing in terms of a disease? And the fact is, yes, it is. A lot has to do with our behavior. So anyways, a decade passed and I started working on it. It was only last year that I finally managed to have the courage to see if I can go ahead and come out with these oils as an offering to people who are going through, say, stressful conditions or insomnia or heartbreak, mostly problems that I have experienced myself. And I started working. Thankfully, I got selected into one of the best educational institutes, which is one of the best incubators for startups. That is IIM Bangalore, Indian Institute of Management. And there I met one of the professors who took an interest in my project. And then he asked me this question. He felt that this work was interesting. And he said, this is interesting, but do you think you can personalize it? Because the heartbreak that you experience need not be what somebody else experiences. And that got me thinking again, and I started researching. So this is where I want to introduce you to Ayurveda and Perfumery. So all that was just a setup to take you through how you can use oils and how you can personalize it. So now when I take Ayurveda is the science of life. It is one of the oldest traditional medicine systems which had its origins in India. And it thinks of the entire world, the universe, this table, this person, the clothes I wear, in terms of 5 elements. Now, describing something with 5 elements was very, very complicated. So what they decided was that they will describe the world in terms of 3, where they combine the elements. So in terms of, say, if this is fire and this is air, you have space, you have water, and you have earth. Okay, so can I connect space and air and call it one thing, and let that be vata? Okay, and can I connect earth and water and call it kapha? Okay, and can I connect fire and earth and call it pitta? Okay, so this was the main fundamental theory behind Ayurveda, the Tridosha theory. So these 3, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, are the 3 doshas. The 3 doshas, or doshas are things that are constantly in flux. Now, when I think about a person as Vata, Pitta or Kapha, what does it mean? So Vata primarily means air. So if I tell you, or if I ask you the question, if a person is full of air, do you think their body is going to be lighter or heavier than average? You would agree that they would be lighter. So Vata people are generally, very lightweight. Their bones are thin. Now, when I say the person is a lot of air, do you think their thoughts dart? Do they have too many thoughts like the wind? Or is it one smooth flow? You would agree that it is going to be darting around like the wind. So Vata's mind tends to be more creative. And if you push too much of thoughts into them, they tend to become anxious or they tend to worry because they can actually think of so many things in one go. Now if I tell you that somebody is Pitta is primarily fire. And I tell you about fire, I'm not talking just about the heat, but also in terms of transformations, in terms of, say, digestive power, in terms of enzymes, in terms of hormones. All those are things that can change, things. So metabolism, all that comes into play. So Pitta is somebody who's got a lot of fire. Now if I ask you the question, do you think this person is going to be quick to anger, or are they very chilled out? You would agree that these are people who might get angry really soon. Now, like I said, Pitta is the characteristics of Pitta is the ability to transform. So if I ask you the question, would a Pitta person like things in a particular order? You would agree that these are people who would like things in order. Now, if I ask you the question, what about Vata? Vata is all over the place. So for 1 minute, they might be working on creative writing. Another minute, they might be talking to somebody. Another few hours later, they are working on a song. So they're very creative and they can work with multiple parts of their brain. Whereas Pitta likes something which is very, very focused, which is, they're good at planning, they're good administrators, good managers. Now, if you think about a person as Kapha, Kapha is earth. Now, when I say a person has a lot of earth, would you think that this person is heavier than normal? Their bone weight or their bone structure, all that is heavier? Or will they be light? You would agree that they would be heavier. So likewise, in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, there are many physiological classifications. Looking at those physiological, for instance, it could be the body's weight, it could be how fast your heartbeat is, it could be how good your digestion is, it could be how good your hair growth is, the kind of skin you have, all that is being described. So based on that, you can actually identify if a person is Vata, Pitta or Kapha. So there are 3 types of personalities primarily. But then there are also subcategories because there is nothing called a pure Vata, right? So you would have people who are a combination of Vata, Pitta, or you might have a combination of Pitta, Kapha, or you might have a very rare combination of Kapha and Vata, or you could have a combination of it all 3. So for my studies, I decided to take 7 types of people. Okay, now when I look at those, people, I know that specific oils work for them. For instance, I know that Vata is someone who is feeling anxious all the time. So whatever problems they're going to have, they're definitely going to have anxiety. Do we have essential oils which will bring down anxiety? Likewise, Pitta is going to feel really frustrated, angry. So can I bring that down? Kapha is going to feel demotivated or depressed. Can I, help with that? So I look at the oils in terms of how they impact physiology. Now, if I take another step, some of us love these summers. When it's warm, our skin is doing good, we are feeling very good. But at the same time, when we get into winter, we feel really cold, the skin becomes dry and you're really cranky. Right? And likewise, if I take some of us, when it comes to heat, they feel really, when they can't bear the heat. Their body temperature itself is warmer than normal. So they prefer a cooler temperature. Now, this is also related to your body type based on Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata, the air person, air. Okay, they tend to have smooth but dry skin. They have dry skin. Okay, and their body is normally cooler and they need a lot of warmth. So when I look at the oils that a person needs, I would also look into what is the season they are going to experience and therefore give them the oils which are related to seasons, which is going to help them. When I'm working with, say, a Pitta person, I would make sure if it is summer that's coming up, I would give them oils like vetiver, okay, which is going to help reduce the heat. Likewise, if it is a Kapha, during winters, we need to give special care for them, otherwise they might have respiratory problems. So I look into all that, and then comes the part where yoga is famous, because yoga looks into this whole body in terms of chakras. Chakras are energy points. In those days, we did not have, say, an MRI scan. We wouldn't really know what is going on. So there were methods to describe something or define something. And that is how they started using chakras. So I'll also look into this whole part of chakra system where are you, say, stressed because of too much of thinking? Possibly you're working on your say business, or you're working on how to do something which is quite challenging, and that's why you have to use a lot of your thinking abilities. Or are you stressed because you are not able to voice your opinion? Is that the thing? Or is your heart broken? Is that causing you stress? Or is someone taking your power away? So that is here. Or is it because you're not able to experience beauty and pleasure? That's further lower. Or is it because you do not have the financial resources or the support systems required to take you through the next step? That's the last chakra. So all those chakras, so you look into, what is the problem that the person is facing. Now if I combine all these three, okay, so I have looked into the physiology, I have looked into the environment, and I have also looked into the psychology of the problem you're experiencing. And now if I try to combine, do you think that oil would really help? Because the fact is now, how does these oils work? It's because when you use oils, it can connect quickly to your memory. For instance, it might be just the scent of lavender and you suddenly remember maybe your grandma's place, right? So it's things like that. You immediately trigger your memory. So can I use scents so that I can trigger thinking of a good, happy memory? You're not thinking of something sad. Okay. Likewise, I can use essential oils to trigger hormones, and I can use oils to trigger say neurotransmitters and how you are dealing with stress. So those kind of things can be done. And at the third level, it's purely psychological, where you feel good, because essential oils are something that are so beautiful that you can actually feel good just by smelling it. It's creating a bit of beauty around you. So if you combine all of it, the oils that I offer are related to stress, related to heartbreak, related to your inability to sleep. And likewise, I work on winter depression as well as your ability to focus. That I had done, where I kind of, would describe to me what do they feel. So for instance, if I give them the oil related to focus, they would feel the difference. They can say, they might give me answers like, I can focus better, I feel I'm meditating, I can pray better. That means I have been able to get into how their brain is working. So these are the kind of things that I do, and I want you to remember just one takeaway from all this is that, whatever you're feeling is very real, but at the same time it is biochemical as well. Okay, there are changes that is constantly happening. Your body is creating changes in your mind is creating changes in your body. So if you can find ways to direct yourself, it could be using essential oils, it could be using mindfulness techniques, it could be using breathing techniques, it could be using any other technique. But I want you to remember that you have the strength within you to see yourself through this whole difficult phase that you're going through. So when things are going great, we don't have to worry about it. But when things are not going great, we might need to remind ourselves that we are capable of coming out of this. So I'd like to thank you all once again. I would be happy to take questions now. So this is Nuthan Manohan, and my startup is called Me Met Me. So I hope you get to meet yourself as well. Namaste.